At 5.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate live at 5, the first edition of 2022. Damn, Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, too.
We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's start with thing number one. How was your New Year?
Good. I made sure to stay up this 1 year. Past 2 years, look, when you get past 30, it doesn't really matter as much.
Unless your wife is under 30.
Unless you have a younger wife.
Yeah.
But yeah, we historically we go to bed.
Right.
It's just another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, stayed up, saw it out. 2021 got a few last punches in, I think, with Betty White going, which we all know.
Yeah.
By the way, PSA from our show, Betty White, thank you for being a friend. Number 2, had a toilet leak right at midnight.
2022
So
started.
I was grumbling, just 2021, man, get out of here.
Yeah.
So we got that taken out of control, handled in control.
Got it under control.
What about you?
Yeah, so our
gonna get a Starburst for
our
you
good
today.
friend, the lovely, very talented comedian Kristen Weber was in town. We got to hang out with her a little bit on the 30th. And so my wife and I, we had a New Year's Eve party for our Bible study. So I'm going to throw some shade at them real quick. So our Bible study is like college and young adults. So like 18 to 29. Those
Very
are the people who are in our
responsible
Bible
folks.
study. And anything that we do with them is like hit or miss. Either there's like all of them there and they brought their friends, or nobody shows up. The New Year's Eve party was a nobody shows up. So Kristen Weber was like, you know what? I'll come and hang out at your New Year's Eve party the next night. She didn't have very much to do. She's like, I don't have anything to do right before 10 o'clock. And then after that, from 10 to midnight, I'm hanging out with some of my real friends in Dallas. And
That's a mean thing to say.
it's the truth.
Okay.
We're pretend friends.
Good.
So-
We're online friends.
Yeah. So anyway, so she comes and she gets done with everything she needs to do for the day. She sends us a text message. She's like, hey, I'm done with my chores. I'm going to come over. And we're like, cool. You're the only one. We got like 5 pounds of taco meat that's just like been made, refried beans, and
It's a good news, bad news type situation.
yeah. And so when Kristen comes over, Kristen doesn't eat meat right now. So
So we've got some iceberg lettuce.
yeah, I
Chopped up.
I got some shredded lettuce and some taco shells with tomatoes, if that's what you want. But she ended up hanging out with us for about an hour, hour and a half. Yeah, we had a lot of. There was some good guac. So that's how our New Year's went. And then stuff immediately started to fall apart for us. We should share what's been going on with our show. So if you were watching live at 5 in the middle of December, and if you haven't, you can go back and watch that episode. Probably December 16th, I think, is the episode you're looking for, but it maybe aired like the 17th or 18th. Regardless, mid-December, we did this amazing interview with Kyle Mann.
I wasn't sure where you were going. I was like, what happened?
Yeah, no.
Yes.
So we did this great interview with Kyle Mann, who is the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee. That interview was awesome. We had a ton of fun. We talked to him about, where the future of the Bee was going. We talked to him about, becoming like this sort of juggernaut in internet satire.
Yeah, he's a great guest. He's very funny.
He was super kind to us. He talked after we interviewed, talked with us for a very long time. It was a lot of fun. And then we come to find out that, so during the interview, we asked him, and this will be a bit of a spoiler if you're listening to the interview, we talk about Elon Musk tweeting about the Babylon Bee and how crazy that was for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what is it like having a Iron Man talk about you?
Yeah, so that night,
Having Iron Man as a fan.
That night, they get a message from Elon Musk that says, hey, we can do an interview, be in Austin on Sunday. Now, they're in California, so now they got to fly to Austin. They really don't know. It came from Elon's Twitter account, so they knew that it was actually him, but they don't have any communication with him outside of, once they set the time and the day, okay, he said, be here Sunday then. They said, okay, we'll do it.
Superman will show up or he won't.
And then they don't get any
see.
other communication with him, right? So they end up staying with a friend of theirs, Michael Malice, who's been on their show several times. And Malice was just super awesome, helped them get a studio. I said they stayed with him, stayed at a hotel. So Malice helps them get a studio. They end up recording the episode with Malice there. So Malice, who is that regardless of what you think about the guy's politics and shtick, he's a brilliant dude and a great podcast host in his own right. Michael Malice is phenomenal. Just really, really talented. And so they've got this guy who is arguably the best interviewer in that room on the sidelines
Yeah.
while they interview Elon Musk. So they have this wonderful interview with Elon Musk. It's up in its entirety on the Babylon Bee website. Seth, Kyle, and
Yeah, there's some
Ethan
real highlights in
are
that
there,
one.
and so it's a little weird because Seth, the CEO of
Yeah.
the Babylon Bee,
Seth
was
is in it
there.
when he's not normally.
Yeah, he's not typically. But if I'm the CEO of the Babylon Bee,
I'm going to be there too.
yeah, and I'm footing the bill for all of it. Yeah, absolutely, I'm going to sit down with Elon Musk. Like, try and talk me out of it. You can't. So, it was really, everything was just odd about that whole situation. The interview is really cool. It's great to see. We're watching it on Monday and
Yeah, it was
Tuesday. and
surreal
it's
seeing
like,
a picture before we saw
yeah,
before we heard the interview that we saw them for,
just
Seth,
sitting there when we had
Kyle,
just
and
talked to him
Ethan.
about it, right?
Yeah.
And then it's one of those things where it's like you get to watch some of your heroes
Yeah.
meet their heroes, and now that we've got a relationship, we've at this point we've interviewed all of those guys, right?
Yeah,
We did
except
Seth back in
except for
March.
Elon.
Ethan, we done, and then Kyle, we had just interviewed just days before. So
Elon's
getting
coming
to,
up.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll just drive down to Austin and just knock on his door. Mr. Musk, can I have a Tesla? So there's all of this. I guess kind of strange attachment for us to all of this, but it's very tertiary, right? Like we have no real relationship with Ethan and Kyle. Thank you, Colton. With Ethan and Kyle and Seth, outside of we've interviewed him, they were very friendly with us. We found them all to be pretty good guys all the way around.
We've sent some presents.
Yeah, we did. We certainly did to Ethan, and so all of this seems really, really great. And then 2 days later, we get the news. We saw the tweet, like so many people did, of Ethan that says it's been a crazy week. We got to interview Elon Musk. I got food poisoning, and then I got fired from the Babylon Bee without any explanation. And we were all in shock.
Yeah, there was a lot of panicked phone calls and texts from friends of ours trying to speculate while maintaining some level of calmness.
Yeah.
Because that came out of the blue. I mean, Ethan Nicole and Kyle Mann are the two hosts of the Babylon Bee podcast, which is a big show on YouTube. They're a very big audio podcast show. In addition to that, they pretty much run the day-to-day operations of, Kyle with the headlines and the content, and then Ethan with the visual.
Yeah.
So having one of them
just gone,
just terminated with according to him, with no notice and no cause, was very odd.
It was really strange. And so, like you said, we're getting phone calls, we're getting text messages. We don't really know what's going on. And I think even to this moment, nobody has the full picture except for probably Ethan and Seth. I think they are probably the only two people with the entirety of the situation in their purview. So,
just real quick, if you do want to listen to Ethan's side, he did just come out.
We'll get to this.
Okay,
because
cool.
let's put the timeline together. So we find out about it. Well, we're like everybody else. We're thinking maybe this is some satire, but we've got these, like we said, tertiary relationships with everybody.
Haha, very funny.
Yeah, like,
you
oh,
got
that's
fired.
great.
Haha.
And
Poor taste.
And so there's guests that we've had on the show that they've had on their show, and some of those guests are getting in touch with us and vice versa. And they're like, "Hey, have you seen this?" I'm like, "Yes, we have. Is this real?" None of us really know what's going on. Well, by the end of the evening, Seth has put out a statement on Not the Bee.
Which was a screenshot
know,
of their Slack channel.
It was a screenshot of the corporate email that they sent out.
I could have sworn it was in Slack.
So
it was something else I'm thinking of.
Yeah. So anyway,
continue.
So if you're not familiar with Not the Bee, it is the sister to the Babylon Bee, and the Not the Bee website essentially is like if it's news that's so dumb that you think it's fake, but it's actually real. And that's basically how they tell other stories. While the Babylon Bee is satire,
I'm going to pull up an example while you continue.
Not the Bee is kind of like real news told sarcastically, and it's it's interesting. It's got a great community there. One of the things that's so cool about the Not the Bee community is that it has its own sort of social media platform where people are taking their posting things. It almost looks a bit like Reddit. If you've ever been on Reddit, that's, I think, probably what you can say that it's the closest to. It's kind of like a mixture between Reddit and Facebook. And so, okay, here we go.
Hold on. Here's a good one. Hero alert. Hockey fan saves an NFL staffer's life after spotting a cancerous mole from the stands.
Okay.
Apparently that really happened.
Yeah. And so this is their
It's funny headlines that sound implausible,
stuff that
but
sound
happen.
fake, but is actually real. So all that to say, when we get on the Not the Bee, since we're subscribers, we get on the Not the Bee forums, and Seth has put out this statement that says basically it's true, Ethan's not with us anymore, but there are things we can't talk about. The Bee is going to continue to move forward. We wish Ethan all the best. And then the situation really starts to, from an outsider looking in, as we are, it starts to take this weird turn because the people on the Babylon Bee aren't saying anything, and Ethan has now said several things. He's made the claim that this wasn't like a long time. This kind of happened to spur the moment, and then if you listen to his other podcast, Audio Mullet, they put out their first episode since April 21st of 2021. Came out today, January 4th of 2022. So 8 months without podcasting, they release an episode. It's just Ethan and Doug talking about Ethan's departure from the Babylon Bee and Doug getting so angry that he threw a plant across the room.
Yeah.
Those are the two highlights of it, which, if you want all the details for it, I would suggest that you listen to it, because I do think that Ethan handles the situation very gracefully. He doesn't speak ill necessarily of anybody, but he tries to be very matter of fact and to handle everybody fairly. He brings up as much as things at the end kind of just blew up. And I think that might be the most accurate way to put it, because it does seem like there was a tension point that got reached between contract negotiations and just all of the stress of what happened with the Elon Musk interview, and then his family getting food poisoning on top of that, and everything kind of, all the stress that's related to that and the tension there, that they reached this breaking point. And in the midst of that breaking point, that the employment of Ethan Nicolle was terminated. Whether or not it should have been, I think, is really what's in the court of public opinion, and something that the guys at the Bee obviously now have the opportunity to respond to.
Yeah, and since then, as of today, there's a new episode that just dropped on the Babylon Bees podcast where it features Joel
Berry.
Okay,
Yeah.
Joel Berry, who is the managing editor. And I was listening to it waiting for some juicy gossip, and there's not really any. I'm not really all the way through it, but...
So I've finished the episode. He doesn't talk about any of this at all. And I almost think, because, not that we're any kind of investigative journalists, but I almost think that it is...
this is just opinion, and just to be clear.
I almost think that this was something that was recorded before all of this, because you still have Brave Ollie Possum is on the shelf behind him. Ethan's axe cop, fireman axe, is still back there, and there's a lot of things that belong to Ethan that are on the shelves.
So that makes me think that if this was recorded in advance, they did have to dump a couple of episodes that Ethan is in.
Well,
as
he
discussed.
has said as much.
Yeah,
he said that there were a couple of episodes that they dumped, and one of the things he talks about on the podcast with Doug is that IP. And if you don't know what that is, IP stands for intellectual property, and intellectual property has got just so many different.
Let's ask Colton real quick. Colton, what do you know about
Colton's microphone? Isn't coming.
What do you know
out
about
of the
intellectual
air.
property?
He just knows how to Google it.
It's 7.
But the intellectual property can cover anything from an idea to something that has to do with patents to copyright infringements as it comes to things for songs, for poetry.
We had a friend that wanted us to sign our... Actually, we've had a couple.
Yeah, that wanted us to sign away all of our intellectual
IP.
property.
Yeah.
And so the intellectual property, though, when you're in the creative space...
I use the word friend loosely there.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon and Jared like him.
Yeah, you know who you are.
anyway,
Go ahead. Keep going.
the necessity to protect a person's intellectual property in the creative space is huge.
Yeah.
Right? Because
It's their livelihood. It's
and,
more than that, too.
And
It's
depending
their-
on what it covers, like if you and I didn't have an IP agreement and we come up with a character, let's say, as we're just like riffing with one of our guests, right? And we've got an intellectual property agreement, they come up with it, with the character, they riff on some things, but we've got it on recording. That now becomes our character, even though it was their idea. They came up with everything. And whether we want to use it or not, if they ever use it because it came up with it on our show, we own part of that intellectual property if certain agreements are in place. This is why intellectual property is such a big deal, is because even if we didn't have it, we could say, if we gave any input, that, strictly speaking, we might own some of that character. And so it's really, really tedious stuff, but it's really important if you're trying
it's just like Doug said on that episode. It's lawyers.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's lawyers and it's courtroom stuff in order to try and protect people that otherwise may not go out of their way to fight for something that they actually had the rights to.
And by the way, quick note, and for anyone considering checking out that Audio Mullet podcast, it does contain language that is not safe for work, not safe around children.
Yeah.
It's got some pretty extreme moments. Still, you may make you up your own mind on that, but just a little warning there.
Yeah, it's barely there, and it happens really quick. But
it's there.
It's it's definitely there. So the guys at the Beeb released this new thing, but they've been pretty silent on it. Well, here's where things for us get a little weird.
Yeah.
We have, and we'll peel back. I say we'll peel back the curtain a bit. If you're familiar with our show,
the curtain is completely
you know
back.
This stuff. Is that we record our episodes in advance. We've got 2 or 3 weeks worth of episodes at a time that we have, quote unquote, in the tank, so that if Danley goes on vacation or Kirsten and I are on vacation, if somebody gets sick, or maybe if I've got a speaking gig or something, then we're not able to record an episode that week, but we still put something out because we've got a backlog. Well, it really hurts us whenever there is breaking news.
Yeah.
If something in the news cycle happens and now all of a sudden we can't get on top of it because we have something
This has
that's
happened
in the
a couple
backlog.
of times, and I don't want to get bogged down, but this has happened a couple of times.
It has.
That we discuss something in an episode, and then a week later something changes, and now what we're going to be putting out is technically
Old news.
Old news or even incorrect. It's not the case anymore.
Yeah. And with this one in particular, it was old news hours after it aired because we talk about Ethan Nicole and then all of a sudden, or we talk about, Elon Musk, and then all of a sudden they're interviewing Elon Musk
him
within hours. And then we also talk about all of these people who, since Ethan Nicole's termination, have quit.
Yeah.
Like by name, we mentioned several people that have quit. And so we had this very cordial, respectful back and forth with both Kyle and Seth. Well, I say both Kyle and Seth. Kyle responded. Seth is
Seth was
CC'd
included
on all of this stuff about what they wanted us to do with the episode because we really try to conduct ourselves with integrity. We're not journalists, number one. We're certainly not gotcha journalists where we're trying to record something and get people into it. We do this for fun. And so now we found ourselves in this weird place where
we're kind of in the know.
Yeah,
and we've got
we've got all of this stuff.
We've got an interview that is going to come out
this week.
Yeah, it's going to come out in a very short amount of time.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense anymore. A lot of things about it don't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of things about it's like this weird time capsule where if last week doesn't happen, this is what they were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But since last week exists, none of it's relevant anymore. It is the ultimate in the what if, right? That if
like the Marvel what if?
Yeah, but like in the sort of like if these things wouldn't have happened, what was the plan? Well, we know we got it outlined to us about what the plan was, where things were going with animation and all this, and so we've really struggled and kind of been torn with how to put this episode out, what edits we need to make, what's the best way,
how to keep our content with integrity.
Yeah, and
While maintaining the relationships.
and on the back end of it, there's so much that is fascinating because we've fielded phone calls, we've heard from people, we've been talking to all of the people involved. That there is a certain part of me that, because of the information we have, like there's some stuff that I'd like to share.
Yeah.
That I would like to say, hey,
We've been going
X,
back and
X,
forth.
Y, and Z happened.
We've been going back and forth on this, on having some buddies on to talk about it that are all in the know.
Yeah, and there are several people that want to share their experiences one way or the other, positively and negatively. And we've considered, hey, do we do this? Do we bring them on the show so that they can talk about it? Because that's really not...
The only thing we can really agree on is not on a live show like this.
Yeah, not on a live show, because we don't know, if people are talking about either their frustrations with one party or another, or if they're talking about their personal experiences and potential hurts and stuff that they've had. There is a likelihood that they will push things too far and say things that they then regret, just like any of us do when we're frustrated, just like any of us do when we're hurt, and just like any of us do when we're riled up and really close to a situation where either we've seen somebody that we love be hurt or be slandered or whatever. It's really difficult for us to maintain our composures even weeks later as we talk about it, because especially if that person is close to us, we tend to hang on to those hurts a little bit more than we would otherwise. And that just brings a bit of emotion that isn't normally part of our conversations.
Well, going back to this week's episode with Joel Berry, it may have been recorded in advance and then released because they needed to have some kind of content in the can.
And Patrick did a great job, by the way. Good job.
Yeah, I enjoyed hearing from Joel. I hadn't really heard from him.
They had him on an episode, I think, a few months ago.
My thought is that the move, this is again speculation on my part, my opinion.
Please speculate.
Is that
irresponsible speculation, as our
Seth, the
CEO say.
of the Babylon Bee, does think that he can replace Ethan, that he can ultimately replace most of the cogs in the machine, from a corporate mindset, from a business.
Sure.
I think he'd have a hard time replacing Kyle, but he's going to need to put some more characters out on the field, and that's if he's identified Joel potentially as one of them. He's Joel is friends with Kyle. He thinks he mentions in their episode that
so Joel and Kyle became friends through Discern.
Yeah, pitching headlines.
So Joel was a subscriber to Discern. If you don't know what Discern is, Discern was it's this weird sliver of things with Adam Ford and Seth Dillon, where they did a very straightforward, well put together news site. Joel started off there as like one of the highest rated commenters, and would post these really long things about the stories and examining the worldviews that was in the stories. And there was a 1,000-character limit. And so you would have these things where Joel wrote something and then replied to what he wrote and then replied to what he wrote again. And I remember being on those forums and reading those and was like, okay, this guy's a good writer, but he's not a writer. He's just a commenter. And now the comments have gotten longer than the article and whatever. But that's how they found out about him. Adam Ford picked him up to work with Discern, and when Discern became defunct, then he was working a bit with Not the Bee and still does some stuff with Not the Bee, but they realized that he had a talent for what's going on at the Babylon Bee because he could kind of speak in Kyle's voice pretty well.
He
and that's why the two of them
He said he
became
speaks
really
Kmart Kyle.
Yeah. And that's pretty accurate.
So that being said, I think ultimately my opinion is, and I'm reserving any judgment. I'm just saying, if Seth thinks that he can replace Ethan, that some of these people that are in the public eye are replaceable.
Yeah.
I like the way Ethan had said that he doesn't want anyone to go cancel their subscription. He has friends working there still.
And Doug says he doesn't know how to cancel his subscription.
Yeah, I hope that the Bee does live on, that they do find a way to overcome this and and move forward, because I like the content and I hope that their heart isn't changing.
Yeah,
and I don't mean their political heart. I mean the playtime, having fun with things, poking fun at things, that's good. And they do it in a way that I really enjoy. I hope that doesn't change.
Yeah, and if you are a subscriber and you go and you look at the headline forums, or if you've seen some of the stuff that's been posted about the Bee, they have, I won't say they've done a perfect job, but they have done a pretty good job of being the brunt of the joke and just allowing it to happen, allowing other people to make fun of them, even in their own forums, in all of the spaces that they regulate. Now, if you say something ridiculous or something that seems like violent towards somebody, like somebody actually posted in one of the forums, "Death to Seth Dillon," and they took it down. Well, obviously they would take it down. That's a repulsive thing for anybody to post, right? Even as a joke. No matter what you think about any of this stuff, Seth is a real human being, and when he came on our show, was very gracious to us to give us time when we arguably deserved none of it. Yeah. He gave us over an hour, of time on our show. So, but for anything like that to get posted, like obviously
if he charged us for that hour, we would both be bankrupt.
Yeah, probably. I mean, unless everything he's got's in points. So we'll just give you you can get 5 points.
Or do you take Jersey Mike's points?
Yeah. So anyway, but that said, like it's a weird.
It's a sad.
It's a weird situation.
It's a somber moment seeing him go because I did love him in that role. Mm-hmm. That being said, I'm speaking of Ethan.
Yeah.
Ethan Nicolle is a fantastic artist, creator, animator.
Yeah.
The world is literally his oyster, which he's said.
And the guys that left, while this was their main gig, it was their main gig like right now.
Yeah.
It's not because they didn't have a ton of creative IP built up for them to fall back on. And that I think is a really important thing to understand. Is like the guys that have left because they could, and they wanted to walk away, and now seemed like the time to do it.
Yeah, Frank Fleming is one of those that.
Yeah,
he didn't really need it. I think he had said something on Twitter that he makes the money that he needs off of his book sales.
Okay, off of his book sales, but also Frank's a brilliant programmer, and like the Babylon Bee tried to get him to go full time, and he was like, "No, this is what you're gonna have to pay me to go full time." And they're like, "Frank, we're so happy that you give us the time that you give us. Like, thank you so much."
Well,
that's kind of the thing, and
it's been tough seeing the turmoil over there.
It has,
I think, for both of us,
but
as well as I'm sure all of their fans.
And every company goes through its own set of growing pains. We went through it as a church, right? When the pastor before me took over, when Dr. Smith took over, that would have been 10 years ago now. Our church was down to 20 people. And in that time, we've had high points right before the pandemic of up to 140 that were coming on a regular basis, which was the most the churches ever have. Now we're settling into the 80s, so we're still right there in the average-sized American church, and we love it. We're having a blast. If you were to look back over the last 8 years since I've been here, there are some people that were really integral parts of everything we were doing at the church 8 years ago that aren't here anymore. And some of them have left out of necessity, some of them have left because God called them somewhere else, and some of them have left because there were frictions and things that we couldn't get past.
When you measure the average, do you use the TMI and measure the yaw?
So it's just one of these things that, like, no matter what you're growing, whether it's a corporation, whether it's a media company like what the Babylon Bee is, whether it's a church, or in some cases, whether it's just a small business, whatever it is that you're doing, anytime you try to take something and grow it, there's always these growing pains. Mm-hmm. And I think that for us, it's going to be weird releasing our episode with Kyle this week, knowing that it will probably get some attention because
I will say there's a very funny moment. I think that's going to make a blooper reel.
Yeah, but there are some people that are going to think that it's something that it isn't, where they're going to get some kind of like secrets revealed, and it's not that.
Yeah, it's him speaking very kindly about.
Yeah, we have
about a bunch of people that have left.
We have this version of the what if of the Babylon Bee. Yeah. Like, if this 1 week never happens, what was the outlook actually like? What was their projection? What were they looking at?
Christian Nerds Unite. Check it out.
Okay, cool. So there's that just is total like disruption and just anyway. There's growing pains. This episode's going to be a little weird that comes out this week. And no, you didn't. You did not. You almost derailed us. So almost. So there's an episode this week that comes out that's going to be a little bit different than what we've been used to and what we've done in the past, just because it comes on the heels of a very weird news cycle. But all in all, for anybody that is wondering about the Babylon Bee, know that having gotten to talk to people on both sides, specifically Kyle and Ethan, both those guys still have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. Ethan even says on his podcast on Audio Mullet, he really loves Kyle, and there's a lot of stuff about Kyle that their friendship and the way that it's grown. Kyle's very complimentary of Ethan in the episode that we have, with him on. It's weird things happen in business that you can't change once they do, and our prayer is if we can have a serious moment. Whether you'll allow it or not, Colton can just mute your microphone. Our prayer should be for one is for reconciliation between these guys, if there is anything there, because they did have some chemistry, and there were really deep friendships that were built with a lot of the guys on the crew, and specifically with Kyle and Ethan, and what they built with the Babylon Bee is very cool. And then just that guy would just use this in whatever way he deems fit in order to bring him the most glory on the outcome. These kind of public things, when they happen to Christian companies, are always weird. It's always a struggle. But the rest of us, I would just really encourage you, don't give in to the gossip and all the other stuff or the wild speculation. The guys are telling their stories, and take that for what it's worth. And that's our 2 cents on how we got caught up in this crazy whirlwind after Kristen Weber was the only guest at my New Year's Eve party.
Well, that being said, let us know in the comments what you thought about episode 1 of the Book of Boba Fett. We thoroughly enjoyed it.
Speak for yourself.
You didn't like it?
It was okay.
Let's talk about it real quick.
It was okay.
We got 5 minutes. I'm ready to move on. Okay, we can have as much time as we want.
Not really. We have an interview in 20 minutes.
Okay, well, we have 20 minutes then.
We don't have 20 minutes. You don't understand how time works. This has been another episode of the Reverend and the Reprobate live at 5. Next week, listen to our criticisms of the Book of Boba Fett. We'll tell you why Nathan, Jesse,
and how episode
Sam
2
Jesse,
brings it
and
home.
David Jesse
Turns
all
negative
on their view of the Matrix Resurrection.
Hey Colton, how do you tell an aspen?
And we can tell you all this stuff because of the way that it is.
Yeah, nature's neat.
Nature's neat.
Have a good one.